Hello, Intro to Ethics. I hope this video finds you well. I went over this in class, but I'm just recording a quick video to go over the structure of the test questions, just to make sure we know what's going on and everybody is on the same page. All right. So test number one, this ends section number one. And it's due Wednesday, October 10th by noon. Right, so you'll be uploading files to Moodle. You've got the questions, and you've got the time, and you've got each other, and you've got me to ask questions about on Tuesday as well. So, like I say, this is all boilerplate at the beginning. It's all taken from the course syllabus. Tells you what the tests are. They're not comprehensive, so once we're done with Socrates and Aristotle, we're just done with Socrates and Aristotle. We move on to Kant and Mill in section 2. Questions totaling 20 possible points. Fairly substantial short answer kind of questions, asking you to define a term, make an important distinction, critically assess a central point of an argument, etc., related to a particular philosopher. So everything's game for this. Any videos I posted to Moodle, anything I've discussed in class, all of your readings, it's all fair game for this. Yeah, so missed assignment policy. If it looks like you're going to miss the due date for this exam for any life happening kind of reason, extensions require a conversation. You've got to contact me for an extension. Otherwise, you don't get an extension. I'm not trying to be a jerk here. I just want to keep the course flowing. I have over 100 students to manage here, so I just like things to flow at the proper time. That way, I don't fall behind, you don't fall behind, and it's good for everyone. Assignment submission, it's your job to get it to me, and it's my job to assess it. Right, basically. So you're uploading files to Moodle, and if you're nervous about doing that, and frankly, I've seen things happen on Moodle, maybe you should be nervous about doing that. Submit it to Moodle and then email me a copy as well. Right. Make sure that things upload, that the correct document uploads, because your English homework, while fascinating, isn't responses to questions about Socrates and Aristotle. Right, so get me the right document, and I'm going to invest some time and some effort into closely assessing these tests. Now, given that these are fairly substantial, and given that there are a little better than 100 of you this semester, this is going to take me some time. I generally give myself a couple of weeks with these assignments. I'm not just being lazy, I'm working away, but they take time because I have to read, think about, consider, and then write something about each of your responses. Zero tolerance policy on plagiarism. If it doesn't come from your own noggin, it needs a reference. Right, so that is the rule of thumb there. If you're not sure how to reference, the course syllabus has a link to SiteWrite, a program through Letty Library. That'll tell you how and when and in what manner to reference. So that's a good resource for you as well. So if you don't know what's going on with regard to plagiarism avoidance, this program will teach you what's going on with plagiarism avoidance. Right? Don't do it because I've got like a wild spider sense for plagiarism, and actually I just redid the math, and I've taught this course over 50 times now. Right, this is actually number 50. I said 48 in class the other day. My math was off. I forgot that I taught at a school. Right, so I've been at this a while, and generally if you can find it online, I can find it online, and generally if you can find it online, I've probably already found it online. In some cases I've written it. So just don't do it, we won't have a problem. Right? So that's the policy things. You know your readings here: Plato, 5 Dialogues, the Apology, and the Crito. Nicomachean Ethics, books 1, 2, and just section 1 of book 3. Though I don't ask you a question about book 3 on this test, and all of my video material as well. Right, anything that I've posted. There are references here to my videos, which you can find if you just go to my YouTube channel, which I give you there. The channel name is GRANTYOCOM. Right? So it's just my name. You can nab those videos from there fairly easily. So these are short answer questions requiring a minimum of 2 paragraphs. I set a minimum because I was having people give me 2 sentences in response to a question that's worth 5% of your final grade, and I need more. I just need more. I don't care how beautiful those 2 sentences are. I need more analysis than that. So that's your job. Plus, this is supposed to be a writing intensive course, so I need you to write something so that I can engage with your writing and you can get better at it. Right? You need to practice. I need the opportunity to point you in the right direction with regard to getting clear, concise, complete sort of responses to questions that talk about ideas, right? These are the skills that we're trying to develop in this course. So 2 paragraphs. What a paragraph is a bare minimum of 3 sentences. If you've got 2 sentences, you don't have a paragraph. I note that you should probably exceed this minimum, right? Because if you put in minimal effort, the return on that minimal effort is going to be minimal, right? So the idea is break the question down into its parts and answer it until you're done. One final thing about your writing, I need full sentences. Again, writing intensive course. And effectively, you're trying to be clear about these ideas. Point form responses are not clear. They're lists of things rather than analysis of things. So in order to make sense of your point form, I find I have to do too much to your response. And if I'm doing too much to your response in order to make sense of it, then it's not clear, is it? Right? So that's why I need full sentences. I get away with point form when I write on a board because I'm here to explain it. Right? So 5 points for each question, total 20 points. There are 4 questions, 2 on Socrates, 2 on Aristotle. Question 1, 1 on the apology. Socrates presents us with an epistemological, that's theory of knowledge, position in which we're only able to make a negative claim to knowledge. Why is Socrates the wisest man in Athens? However, Socrates is able to make positive moral claims that stem from this negative claim to knowledge. Discuss the intellectual movement from epistemology to ethics that makes this possible. Okay, so I'm asking you to do 3 things here, basically, right? Basically, I'm asking you to describe Socrates' epistemological position. Easiest way to go about answering this might be to ask yourself, why is Socrates the wisest man in Athens? Well, because he knows that he knows nothing. Right? And discuss that. Right? Talk about his investigation, how did he arrive at the conclusion of his investigation, and secondly, right, what I need you to do is discuss Socrates' positive moral claims. I mean, effectively, he's telling us to develop dispositions to opinions and beliefs, our own and other people's. Right? Anytime we're supposed to develop a disposition and act on that disposition, we're talking about a prescriptive claim, a normative claim, or an ethical claim. Right? He's saying you should do this. So we're at a positive ethics. So now how does he get from the negative epistemology to the positive ethics? Where's the umsfa, right? Effectively, right? So those are the 3 parts of that question, right? So I'd describe Socrates' epistemology, I'd describe the transition, because he's not just making a claim about himself. Well, this is just like me here, right? What he does, if you look at that passage at the end of his investigation, and what's probable, gentlemen, is that the God is wise, and his auricular response meant that human wisdom is worth little or nothing. He's not just saying this about his wisdom, he's implicating all of this. I know nothing, you know nothing, the politicians know nothing, the craftsmen know nothing, the poets and the orators know nothing, none of us know anything. So what is called upon in terms of action for us to do on the basis of that, right? So that is how an epistemological claim transitions to an ethical claim. I want some of the meat of the ethics there too. So that's the first question. And like I say, break them down into their parts. Make sure you know what I'm asking you to do. And make sure you do it all, because one of the assessment criteria is completeness. All right? So, second question. That was one on the apology. And here's one on the credo. In its fictional conversation with the laws of Athens, Socrates introduces the distinct but related notions of the social contract and tacit consent. Briefly outline this argument. And I want the whole argument here, right? He gives you a theory of justice in which we should always do the good. Wait, should we return evil for evil? No, because we should always do the good. What about an agreement that we come to? Should we cheat on it, or should we fulfill it? Well, we should fulfill it because we should also always do the good. Well, now, how does social contract and tacit consent fit into this? Well, the social contract is, well, what do you know? It's an agreement. Well, how did we agree to this social contract? Oh, tacitly. All right? That's more or less how the mechanism of the argument fits together. So briefly outline this argument, defining each of these distinct but related notions. All right? So tell me what a social contract is, and tell me what tacit consent is. And then I ask you to do some analysis here. By your analysis of this argument, what sort of duties are implicit to democratic citizenship? Remember, in this argument, the laws of Athens presented 1, 2, 3 options to Socrates in the face of laws that we might determine are unjust. Right? The first option is to obey. Sit down, shut up, obey the law. It's what most of us do. It's what most of us should do. All right? The second is pick up all of your stuff and leave. Okay, you don't want to obey the law because you don't think it's just. You don't want to leave because you're rooted to your nation, your city-state. Right? You're given a 3 option. Persuade the laws to do better, right? To become more just. So effectively, what Socrates has pointed out here is, well, sort of 2 things. One, that it's sort of the duty of every citizen in the context of democracy to demand of their laws that they be just. Right? And secondly, right, he's pointed out that in his long life, and he tells us in the Apology, this is his first time in front of the courts, right? He has never gone to the courts to persuade the laws to do better. Right? So he's pointed out not only what our duty is, but also how he's kind of failed in his duty and has to take his medicine, aka hemlock. Right? So that's what I'm asking you to do in question 2 there. And now we're done with Socrates. Now, we're moving on to question 3, briefly discuss the function argument discussed by Aristotle in Book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics. Right? So that's the thing. Right? What Aristotle notices of all things that have a function, we know the good for those things in terms of that function, and we know how those things attain that good in terms of the virtues relative to their function that allow them to flourish. Right? So this is a basic structure having to do with metaphysics. So as it applies to human ethics, on the other hand, we know what the good is already. It's happiness. But we can't define happiness. We're trying to define happiness. Okay. Well, it's going to have something to do with the exercise of our distinctive function virtuously. Right? So, happiness is an activity of the soul in accord with virtue. So, briefly discuss the function argument. I want to see that you know what the heck you're talking about with regard to this linchpin argument. All right? Introducing this argument, discuss how Aristotle arrives at his definition of happiness by way of this argument. So, how do the parts of the function argument yield the definition of happiness? I try to be straightforward with that question, largely because it's an important sort of one for Aristotle. Right? This is the thing to get out of Book 1 of the Nicomachean Ethics. All right, so hopefully you enjoy that it's straightforward and sort of an easier question. All right. Now, final question. In Book 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics, Section 4, Aristotle argues that virtuous actions themselves are not sufficient to develop a virtuous character. Remember, at the beginning of Book 2 of the Nicomachean Ethics, he talks about virtue of character being habituation, a habitual disposition to our emotions resulting in states of character. Right? Now, he says, how do you develop these habitual dispositions? Well, the same way you get to Carnegie Hall, practice. Right? So I'm asking you to unpack this weird statement of Aristotle's that sometimes actions are not enough, even in the case of crafts, because it's possible to produce a grammatical result by chance or by following someone else's instructions. Right? Then to be grammarians, then, we must both produce a grammatical result and produce it in terms of the grammatical knowledge in us. Right? That's from page 22 of your text. So that's the argument I'm referring to. Right? So here Aristotle adds 3 requirements, insisting, quote, the agent must be in the right state when he does them. First thing I want you to do, and I'm sort of sorting out Aristotle's sort of bad ordering of things, right? He's already told us virtue of character is a habitual disposition to our emotions resulting in states of character, right? On page 22, he says that the agent must be in the right state when he does the action. And only on page 23 does Aristotle bother to determine state. So start off by defining state as discussed by Aristotle in section 5 of book 2. That's on page 23 if you're looking for it. And offer a brief account of virtue of character. I did this when I first introduced it to you, right? So, right, just do what I did, right? Then after that, briefly discuss each of these 3 requirements introduced in section 4 of book 2 by Aristotle. And by discuss, I mean discuss, not list, discuss, because he's got reasons why we would have to know that we're performing virtuous actions, do them for the sake of virtue. What does he mean by that, right? Do them from a firm and unchanging state. Why would he add these requirements? Right? That's the discussion that I'm looking for from you. Right? So again, make sure that you break these questions down into their parts. Make sure that you give yourself time to proofread. Maybe have somebody else read your submission for you before you submit it, because my assessment criteria are these. All responses are graded for clarity of response. Like, can I figure out what you're talking about? Right? That's why we need full sentences, and that's why you need to proofread. Completeness. Did you do everything I asked you to? If you did 2/3 of what I asked you to, you get 2/3 of the grade. Right? Completeness. You've got to completely answer the question. Understanding exhibited in your use of the course material. Right? So, did you say Socrates claims when Socrates doesn't claim? Well, that might be a problem. Right? And the strength of the argument or insight into the material at question. This is sort of an analysis kind of exam. The further into this course we'll be getting, I will be asking you to generate arguments of your own. Right? So this is the exam. If you have any questions, come in armed on Tuesday with those questions, or send me an email, and I will do my best to respond in as timely a manner as possible. If you need anything, just let me know, and hopefully this is clear. If, like I say, you've got plenty of time, if it's not clear, to sort it out. All right, I hope you have a wonderful weekend, and I look forward to reading your response.